Hey everyone, me Kevin here. Here's the latest madness going on with the $3.5 trillion infrastructure package, including updates on some negative outcomes of the bill, massive timing issues, and how everything honestly could just fall apart. We'll also talk about an unemployment extension being debated, and more. But I have to warn you, some of the information in this video might be stressful, and this is where it's always worth making sure you have life insurance. Make sure to go to metkevin.com/life to get life insurance in as little as 5 minutes. If you want life insurance literally in as little as 5 minutes that you can Apple or Android pay for, go to metkevin.com/life. All right, folks, let's talk first about some potential negative externalities that are going to or could come out of the $3.5 trillion infrastructure and stimulus package. First, the resource that I'm about to show is from the Tax Foundation. It is an analysis put together by that group. This particular group does have a slight right bias, though they are deemed highly factual. For what it's worth, let's take a look at what they say. Right here, they mentioned that they expect the $3.5 trillion infrastructure package to reduce our national gross domestic product by about 1%. So a loss of about 1% of GDP over the next 10 years. We also expect to potentially lose up to 303,000 jobs that we would have otherwise had over the next 10 years if this bill passes. In addition to that, well, actually, better yet, here, take a look, because you might be wondering, wait a minute, like, isn't this bill supposed to create jobs? Isn't that the point, that we're creating infrastructure jobs? And the issue is that this work together here, or this sort of report, analyzes not just the benefit of jobs that we would get, but the potential that we would be losing jobs because of higher taxes in certain places, and then makes net estimates to determine, okay, how many fewer people do we think are going to be employed in all different industries throughout our country, or how many more people are going to be employed. And through all of the changes that we have here, we do expect to see a net decline in employment, such as here, increasing the top ordinary tax rate for individuals to 39.6% from 37% could cost 64,000 jobs. Changing some limitations on active pass-through losses at 16,000 jobs. Applying a 3% surcharge on income over $5 million, 32,000 jobs could be lost because of that over 10 years. Raising the corporate tax rate from 21%, where it is now, to 26.5% could reduce jobs by about 107,000 over the next 10 years. And so ultimately, they do add up about 303,000 jobs in total here. There was also one report that suggested, hey, wait a minute, if you increase taxes on cigarettes or nicotine, tobacco-related products, you're actually kind of taxing a lot of people who do smoke, who make less than $400,000. And Biden has regularly said that we would not tax people who make under $400,000, although that might just be splitting hairs, that particular argument. Now, something that's maybe a little bit more relatable to us as individuals has to do with our income, and that is this piece right here by the same report that suggests that if your income is in the top 80%, so in other words, you're not in the bottom 20%, your income is expected to go down over the next 10 years as a result of this plan. And you can see the higher your income goes over here, the more of a percentage decline in income you are expecting to face, with people between or around 20 to 60% experiencing anywhere between a 0.7 to 1.3% decline in income over the next 10 years, 95 to 90% experiencing a 1.8% decline, and that top 1% group here experiencing about a 4.7% decline in income, expected to experience this rather, after this bill passes, and again over the next 10 years. The bottom 20%, however, would expect to see their income go up by about 2.6% over the next 10 years. And this is likely because of a lot of the benefits that are income restricted, like the child tax credit, disproportionately helping elevate the incomes of individuals with lower incomes. For example, if you make $18,000 a year and you have one child, and you all of a sudden get a $3,600 child tax credit, that's almost like making, actually it is like making 20% more money. But if you make $100,000 and you get a child tax credit of $3,500, that's or $3,600. That's like making 3.6% more money. So you can see how there's a disproportionate benefit to lower incomes compared to higher incomes with things that this infrastructure bill includes. A lot of this, of course, social infrastructure, like expanding the child tax credit up to 5 years as opposed to only making it available for 2021. There's some other plans also expected in this infrastructure bill that are still being debated. A new one, for example, that came up is talking about no more conversions allowed for high-earning individuals, to where folks could go from an IRA to a Roth IRA by using backdoor conversions. There might also be required distributions and limitations on how much you could ultimately end up getting in a retirement account, like a $10 million cap on your account and then requiring distributions thereafter. Now, in addition to this, we also have a debate happening regarding the debt limit. We have to get a bill passed for the debt limit to raise the debt limit by September 30th. Otherwise, we risk a government shutdown. The Treasury Department has already warned us that we have funding through about the middle of October, and then the United States government would have to shut down and potentially default on some of its payment obligations, which would be very, very bad. We don't expect this to happen, and Steny Hoyer in the House has already mentioned that we will vote next week on a stopgap measure to essentially kick the can down the road, probably through about the second week of December. This is the same thing we did last year, despite the fact that people like Mitch McConnell were saying, hey, we're not interested, we want to just keep the debt limit, let's stop spending money. The debt limit ended up getting not only extended through December, but then ended up getting increased. So usually politicians are all about saying one thing and doing the other thing, and I kind of grow tired of it. But anyway, at least I'll keep you updated on what's going on. And this is why you want to subscribe to the channel. And of course, get life insurance. Go to mettkevin.com/life. But anyway, we have we also have considerations right now from Mitch McConnell that Democratic leaders, he says, should raise the debt limit on their own using budget reconciliation. And that's because he says Republicans are united in opposition against raising the debt limit. Not because it doesn't need to be done, but because he specifically believes that Democrats should include raising the debt ceiling in their $3.5 trillion infrastructure bill and pass it without Republican support. Now, this is really important because there are a lot of moderate Democrats who are not big fans of spending so much money and raising the debt limit to pay for certain programs inside of this. So Mitch McConnell believes his best opportunity to water down the $3.5 trillion bill is to essentially force Democrats to be more moderate in their $3.5 trillion bill by making sure that they can get moderate Democrat support on the $3.5 trillion bill, along with raising the debt ceiling, and Republicans don't want to have anything to do with it. That is potentially a way of also setting themselves up for their 2022 elections. Now, Nancy Pelosi has said that they plan to vote on the infrastructure bill by September 27th, which would be perfect because that way Nancy Pelosi could do as promised. She could vote on the $1 trillion infrastructure package, the $3.5 trillion package, and the debt ceiling all together. Remember, the $1 trillion package is already passed by the Senate, and the $3.5 trillion package, along with the budget, would get sent over to the Senate, where it is expected to be passed. Now, the $3.5 trillion bill, though, and this is where things get touchy, is not expected to be 100% ready by the end of this month. Remember, the House of Representatives in whole hasn't been called back to session. They've just been back for specific committee meetings. They come back on Monday. The Senate was also gone Thursday and Friday. They'll be back on Monday as well. So this upcoming week is going to be pretty big. We've also got the Federal Reserve coming out to tell us if inflation is as much of a concern as it always has been, and if they expect to taper or reduce the Federal Reserve's money printing, essentially. Their bond asset purchases of $40 billion per month of mortgage-backed securities and $80 billion a month of Treasury bonds. That kind of support could start going away this upcoming week, though personally I expect this not to go away until November, which should give Congress some breathing room on this plan. Now, what's interesting about Mitch McConnell and this debt ceiling debate is Mitch McConnell knows that if moderate Democrats don't get on board with this $3.5 trillion plan, that basically Nancy Pelosi is going to be backed into a corner. She's going to have to use budget reconciliation to make Biden not look like a loony who ended up letting the government default on its debts. So in other words, Biden is going to pressure Nancy Pelosi to make sure the debt limit gets increased, while at the same time, that's going to rush Nancy Pelosi and probably force her to make more compromises on the $3.5 trillion bill than she otherwise would have. This is why Mitch McConnell is saying, just raise the debt limit with your $3.5 trillion bill. He also realizes that Democrats only have one opportunity to use budget reconciliation. If they use it solely to raise the debt limit, then they can't use it on the $3.5 trillion bill if that $3.5 trillion bill isn't ready yet, and that would basically kill the $3.5 trillion bill. So Nancy Pelosi has a massive time frame and time crunch ahead of her. She's going to have to bang out some serious negotiations over the next 2 weeks to negotiate that $3.5 trillion bill and raising the debt ceiling all together in one package, making sure not to lose too many moderate Democrats in the House or a single Democrat in the Senate. Otherwise, that $3.5 trillion package will not happen. Again, the House comes back this week. You can see this one's going to be tense. Now, we also know that AOC has suggested extending unemployment benefits until February of 2022. That's the $300 federal boost to unemployment that ended about 2 weeks ago. If there ends up being an extension, it would be the 4th extension that we've had during this pandemic. Now, AOC is pushing for this to be retroactive through about Labor Day. However, she does acknowledge that this is very unlikely to happen. I also agree. I think it's unlikely to happen. I do not think we will see another unemployment boost from the federal government. I think more focus will be on that child tax credit and some of the other benefits like paid leave within the actual stimulus and infrastructure package. We're also seeing very, very little discussion about actual stimulus checks. Now, AOC has also been a vocal opponent of the SALT tax deduction coming back. In fairness, research does show that 57% of the benefit of that deduction would go to the top 1%. So if it comes back, 57% of that benefit would go to the top 1%. And remember earlier how incomes in the top 1% would drop around 4.7% over 10 years with the new plan? Well, if the SALT tax deduction comes back, we would only see the top 1% have their incomes decline by about 1.9%. In other words, in line with kind of everybody else's income decline. Kind of worth noting in comparison there that SALT tax deduction actually makes a really big difference. You've also got folks right now like Representative Adams threatening to vote no on the reconciliation package unless it also includes billions of dollars in additional federal aid for more historically black colleges and universities. He says this is a requirement if we want to build back better. We do have a big evictions and rental cliff coming up on September 30th. That's because Fannie and Freddie have disallowed landlords from conducting evictions on properties that have Fannie or Freddie loans on them. These are conventional backed mortgages. A lot of people use these mortgages. And so that eviction deadline comes up September 30th. And California's own eviction moratorium ends September 30th as well. So September 30th is a big day. And folks, there you have it. That is a complete roundup of all the madness going on with the infrastructure and stimulus package. I expect this week to be a very busy week. Thank you so much for watching this video, and folks, we'll see you in the next one. Check out the life insurance at matkevin.com/life.